UFC 296 is coming up next weekend, and guys, today I am going to be breaking down every single fight on the card, starting from the bottom to the top. We're going to get into that in just a second. Before we do, though, I do want to say, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with too many YouTube channels, and welcome back to another full card breakdown and prediction video. We're going to get straight into it, guys. Timestamps are there if you'd like to skip to any particular fight. Thank you so much for being here. Starting off with the first fight, and this fight, honestly, this card is fantastic. This card is fantastic, and they're starting off with a great fight in Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikhov. Now, Randy Brown, I'm a little bit higher on Randy Brown than a lot of people who do these types of videos are. I really like what he does. He's a good fighter, uses his range very well. He's a very, very rangy guy for the welterweight division, and for the most part, he's had quite a bit of recent success in the past couple years, with, of course, his only hiccup being against Jack Della Maddalena, but it's tough because some people would consider that, oh, that's a really good loss to have, but then you could say that Jack Della Maddalena did get fraud checked. I still think it's an okay loss to have. Nothing to take away to losing to Jack Della Maddalena, especially like back then. You know what I mean? Jack Della Maddalena had all the confidence. It was just a weird situation, okay? Coming off of a really good win against Wellington Turman, though, just 5 months ago, where he looked pretty good. He was ahead kind of the whole time. He had a pretty good performance this time. And in my opinion, Wellington Turman, he's a good fighter. He's a very underrated fighter, just like Randy Brown is. So I think that is a nice one to have. He's taken on Muslim Salikhov, a striker in himself with some wrestling to back it up, right? He's had mixed success, and I think the mixed success is because he's approaching 40 years old, because he's a very good fighter. He's a very complete fighter. He likes to come in very powerful. He's a good striker. He's a good grappler. He can kind of do everything, but as of recent, he just hasn't been able to put it all together. He's coming off a loss just 5 months ago, just like Randy Brown against Nicholas Dalby, where the fight was pretty back and forth. Like, don't get me wrong, he's still fighting very well for 39 years old, but it's clear that he's losing his step. That's the problem, and that's honestly the reason why I'm going to choose Randy Brown. On top of that, Randy Brown is going to have a significant height and reach advantage. You see an 8-inch reach advantage over here. Randy Brown uses his reach and length very, very well, and I can see him kind of staying on the outside of Muslim Salikhov. Muslim will want to come in. Maybe he'll want to like trade some big shots, but Randy Brown just won't be there to do it. I'm pretty confident saying Randy Brown wins this fight. But Muslim Salikhov, like I said, he's a good fighter. It's just, it's 33 versus 39 with a significant reach advantage against a guy who uses his range very well. I'm going to go with Randy Brown to get the job done here, excuse me. Moving on to the next fight, and this is another fight, guys. Like, I'm probably going to say this about every fight, to be honest with you. I'm excited for this one. We have Shamil Gaziev taking on Martin Buday. Now, I'm very excited to see Shamil back into the UFC because while if you see any of his highlights or anything like that, he has shown incredible promise. But then we finally saw him on the Contender Series, and man, this was just domination. Now, I understand the opponent's still a little bit rocky on how much you want to really take that into consideration, but like 5 seconds into the fight, he got a takedown, found a submission after. He grinded his way through every little bit of defense that Velasco offered. This guy's big, this guy's powerful, and I was taken away from how imposing he was. I really do think this man has potential, but of course, he hasn't fought anybody to the name that Martin Buday has taken on. He's taken on, of course, Martin Buday, he's found quite a bit of success so far. But I know I just said he hasn't taken on anyone like Martin Buday. I should say somebody with the experience of Martin Buday because he's put together some wins. But I don't know, man. I'm just not high on him yet. I'm not convinced he's a real deal. He's looked good in his fights, okay? He's looked very good for a heavyweight. But besides maybe Chris Barnett. Maybe. Because Chris Barnett isn't even that great. Maybe he's just he moves quicker than a lot of heavyweights. Just take a look at these opponents that he's taken on. There's nothing to really look at and go, okay, well, you looked great against, Josh Parisian. Oh, well, you looked great against Jake Collier. Like, he's looked good. It's just, I'm not nearly convinced of him yet. He's a decent all-around heavyweight, but Shamil, man, it's tough because this is just one performance in the Contender Series, and he literally hasn't taken on anybody yet. This guy looks promising. I was just left with this performance saying this man could be something special. If you're going to be something special, I would imagine you could get past Martin Buday. The stats are kind of the same here. It's really, really tough. I was actually thinking about betting on Gaziev, but again, we haven't seen enough from this guy. I will say this man absolutely has promise. I'm going to pick Shamil Gaziev to get the win here just because this dude looks like he can do, well, not just looks. From what we've seen, he can actually impose his will. He can grind through anything that Martin Buday will bring. He is big. He is powerful. And I just haven't been impressed by what I've seen from Martin Buday yet. He hasn't, okay, look at it this way. Buday hasn't fought anybody that appears to be the same level as Gaziev. But Gaziev, we haven't seen actually have that experience. It's just what I'm imagining. Does that make sense? And that's why it's such an interesting fight. This is certainly an underdog opportunity to hop on. The betting guide will be out tomorrow. I'm going to pick Gaziev to win this fight. I love what I've seen from this guy. I think he's going to get past Martin Buday. Moving on to the next fight, we have Andre Touchy Fili taking on Lucas Almeida. Now, this is an interesting fight because both guys have, well, besides Lucas Almeida because he hasn't been in the UFC for that long, they have had spotty records, and Andre Fili, I really do think is better than his record. The only problem is sometimes he just gets into these firefights because he does have that technical brawl kind of style where he'll have no problem trading with you, but at the same time, he'll keep very composed. It's just sometimes this guy gets knocked down, and I feel like he can make better decisions in the octagon. He's had a little bit of a rough go, 22-10, and like I said, I believe he's better than his record. He's taken on nothing but fantastic opponents. That's something to note. That's something that Lucas Almeida has not done. Not done. He's only had 2 fights in the UFC, and just got absolutely destroyed by Pat Sabatini. He landed like no shots in this fight. Like, I want to know the actual strike count in this fight because there was like none. He got taken down in both rounds and just was on the receiving end of some horrible ground and pound. After seeing that fight, well, we always knew that Lucas Almeida was a striker. Here's the thing. You have Lucas Almeida, who is a striker, who is a very powerful striker and will like to try to knock you out, right? He's taken on Andre Fili, who will have no issues standing up. He has a little bit, I would say he's a little bit better on the feet technically, but Andre Fili does have that ground game that Lucas Almeida lacks. Here's the problem though. Andre Fili has been known to make some questionable decisions in the octagon. What happens if Lucas Almeida comes forward? What happens if Lucas Almeida just wants to trade shots and take his head off? Andre Fili, from what we've seen, will have no problem engaging in that battle, while the better decision would obviously to be working that ground game that we all know that he has, because Lucas Almeida, he does have a big hole there. Andre Fili's the better fighter. Andre Fili should win this fight. Andre Fili should have the more options to win this fight, but I can't trust him, especially with my money. I can't trust him to make those decisions in the octagon. Plus, take a look at his record. He hasn't been able to put it together. While you're taking a look at Lucas Almeida, he's only coming off of 1 loss. I'm still going to pick Andre Fili. I just wouldn't be shocked if Lucas Almeida dragged him into a firefight and ended up knocking him out. That's what I'm saying. Andre Fili's a better fighter. I'm picking him to win. Moving on to the next fight, guys. This, in my opinion, has potential to be fight of the night. It really does. I'm very excited for this fight. We have Tagir Ulanbekov taking on Cody Durden. What a great fight. And here's why it's a great fight. It's because both guys are going to come in and they're going to want to get the fight to the ground. They both have very good wrestling with some striking where it's not completely sloppy, but I mean, they just throw their overhands. They want to get the fight to the ground, right? And I don't know who's going to be able to impose their will. Sometimes when you get these two kinds of fighters together, the wrestling kind of nullifies, and then you have like some crazy stand-up war. I don't know what's going to happen in this fight. In my opinion, spoiler alert, I don't really know what to pick here, but Tagir Ulanbekov. Like, both of these guys have looked really good, but I'll start with Tagir Ulanbekov. As of recent, the only hiccup that he's really had was against Tim Elliott. And in my opinion, there's no shame in losing to Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott can beat anybody. He's better than his 17-12 record, but of course he bounced back with a very nice win against Nate Maness. Tagir Ulanbekov does have promise in the division, but so does Cody Durden. Cody Durden is riding a beautiful 4-fight win streak. And guys, you know how I said that I wasn't sure who to pick in this fight, right? It's really tough because both these guys are going to come in with the game plan to probably take him down with some subpar striking. That's going to lead for a fun fight. I'm almost leaning towards Cody Durden just because of this Jake Hadley fight, excuse me. This fight was incredible. And Cody Durden, in his post-fight interview, said that he would rather die than tap out and quit. In this fight, he showed this to be the case. I wholeheartedly believe that Cody Durden would rather die than try to give up position or lose a fight, because if you would remember, Jake Hadley in this fight had a completely locked in armbar in the second round. This guy just got out of it with heart. This guy could have had his arm broken. I see a clear heart difference in Tagir Ulanbekov versus Cody Durden. And when you have a fight this close with a skill set that's kind of like this, both fighters kind of have the same level of skill set in my opinion, I gotta go with the guy who has been shown to really, really fight his way to a win. This guy's heart is on another level in my opinion. I understand that's just one performance, but man, he showed it. This fight was incredible. Both guys had their moments. Scrambles were nice. This guy proved that he wants to be here more than a lot of fighters in the UFC. That's the only thing that stands out in my opinion, and that's why I'm going to have a ever so slightly lean to Cody Durden to win this fight. And I'm talking like 55-45, man. It's a close fight. Certainly not one to bet on. Moving on to the next fight, and we already have another fantastic fight. We have Alonzo Menifield taking on Dustin Jacoby. Now, this is probably going to be a stand-up fight because both guys are kickboxers, while Jacoby will be the more technical sound kickboxer. Menifield is also a pretty good kickboxer, but the power will definitely be on his side. Atomic is a very, very good name for Alonzo Menifield. Alonzo Menifield has put together a pretty good win streak so far. He's looking pretty good. It's shocking that he lost to William Knight, in my opinion. But anyways, he's been very active. He's looked pretty good in his fights. And of course, he had the little bit of a hiccup with the Jimmy Crute decision there. But then we had a bounce back win against Jimmy Crute again, looking even better in this fight. And of course, he's taking on Dustin Jacoby, who has looked really good himself. You could argue that he won this Khalil Roundtree fight. It was close enough for me to not complain, but I'd have to watch it again. I think I have this fight to Khalil, but I know a lot of people were screaming robbery in this fight. I thought it was close enough where you couldn't really complain. Then he had another loss after that against Azmat Mirzakhanov, which, in my opinion, no really shame in losing there. But then he had a nice bounce-back win against Kennedy Nzechukwu, where this fight, he came in, knocked him out. Very quick fight, so very tough to say. Now, I gotta say, I'm gonna pick Dustin Jacoby to win this fight because Alonzo Menifield, he does have that power, and the power's always live, so he can always find a KO win. He always can. It's always live. But Dustin Jacoby is just gonna be more patient. He's gonna be more technical. He's gonna do a really good job kind of staying away from Alonzo Menifield's power. His defense is there. He has a very, very solid game. Plus, if you want to, I think it's important to note that Alonzo Menifield is 36 years old here. I understand that Dustin Jacoby is almost 36, but when you're getting up there, 1 year actually really does matter. Other than that, the stats are pretty similar. I got to go with Dustin Jacoby. I'm going to pick him to win. I think he's a better kickboxer. I think this will stay on the feet, but Alonzo Menifield, that power is always live. Keep that in consideration. Moving on to the next fight, we have Casey O'Neill taking on Ariane Lipski. Now, this one, I don't know what to think about this one, to be honest with you, because I think both fighters are kind of subpar flyweights, to be honest with you. You have Casey O'Neill, who just came across her first loss, but then again, you could argue that the Roxanne Modafferi fight did go against her way, so you could be looking at this fight like she's coming off of a 2-fight losing streak, but it was close enough where it's like, I don't really know. Casey O'Neill is an all-round flyweight fighter who doesn't exactly excel anywhere. It's just really tough to gauge the fights when you have these two fighters, because you can say the same thing about Ariane Lipski. Somehow, because she, of course, she's 16-8, she has been win-loss, 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 right? She actually put together 2 wins, which is a little bit shocking, but then again, it was against JJ Aldrich and Melissa Gatto. I don't really look at that and say, oh my god, those are fantastic wins, you know what I mean? So, looking at this fight, both fighters here don't exactly excel anywhere. They kind of have a subpar all-round skill set. This fight's certainly a toss-up in my opinion. Usually for these fights, I like to bet over 1.5 rounds. I'm not even sure if I want to do that because Ariane Lipski can be submitted. She can submit. We don't know how Casey O'Neill's going to show up. Sometimes she just shows up and just doesn't do much. Very tough fight to pick. This fight is essentially a 50-50 in my opinion. If you made me choose though, if you had a gun to my head, I would say Ariane Lipski will win this fight just because of the momentum she's on, but there's absolutely nothing about technique that backs up what I said there. It's just, again, if you had a gun to my head, I'd pick Lipski to win this fight. Moving on to the next fight, we have Cody Garbrandt returning, and he's taking on Brian Kelleher. This is actually pretty good matchmaking for the UFC, and to be honest with you, I'm shocked that Cody Garbrandt's a favorite. I really am, because, I have no faith in Cody Garbrandt at this point. Cody Garbrandt, if we all know the story of Cody Garbrandt, came onto the scene, 13 wins. He looked fantastic. Well, almost 13 wins. You know what I mean? He came on. He looked like he was going to be the next best thing. He destroyed Dominic Cruz, won the belt, looked fantastic. This guy had all the potential in the world, and he lived up to that potential. He got into the Bantamweight Championship of the world. But then he started swinging. He started getting cocky. He lost his chin. Dillashaw cracked him. He was no longer the same guy, and now Cody Garbrandt can no longer take a shot. Cody Garbrandt has all of the skill in the world. He's a fantastic boxer with a ground game to back it up. He has excellent power. Cody Garbrandt is actually a fantastic fighter, but he has no chin, and he has zero fight IQ. I swear to God, if I walked up to Cody Garbrandt right now and I said, "Hey, Cody Garbrandt, do you want a brawl leaving our heads open?" He'll say yes. Like, he could just do anything that he wanted to me, but I could walk up to this guy and I could say, "Cody Garbrandt, let's leave our heads open and swing like the old, what's that old game with the robots?" You know what I mean? He would do it. That's what he does in the cage, and that's why he loses. For the first time in years, Cody Garbrandt showed a little bit of patience against Trevin Jones, and that led to an incredibly boring decision. Still, he looked slow. He didn't look like the same guy. It's weird because Cody Garbrandt's almost 33 years old, but he looks like he's so far beyond his prime. You know, he's slow, didn't look good. Yeah, he's back in the win column. I'm still not on the train of Cody Garbrandt. He'll need to put together like 4 wins for me to really say, okay, Cody Garbrandt's back. But he's taking on Brian Kelleher, who's 37 years old, hasn't looked good at all. His record, I'm shocked that, to be honest with you, he's not a great fighter, man. He's not a great fighter. His wins haven't aged well. His losses, yeah, they're to good fighters, okay, but still, he's been getting dominated, especially in these last 2 fights. Brian Kelleher, in this fight, has a puncher's chance. But that's a big puncher's chance when you're fighting Cody Garbrandt, because all it takes is, hey, Cody Garbrandt, you want to start swinging? And then Cody Garbrandt gets knocked out. Brian Kelleher, while he isn't exactly a great fighter in himself, he's 37 years old. Cody Garbrandt, I can't trust him. I can't trust him at this point in his career. And I'm not going to trust him. I'm picking Brian Kelleher to win this fight. But I will say Brian Kelleher is the type of opponent where Cody Garbrandt could have a wrestle-heavy, boring win like he did against Trevin Jones. It's possible. But I'm going to pick Brian Kelleher to win here. Moving on to the next fight, we have Irene Aldana taking on Karol Rosa. I don't know what to make of this fight. I was left with Irene Aldana's last performance. It's unbelievable how people had so much faith in her. I didn't have much faith in her. I can tell you that one. I had zero faith in her. But so many people were hyping this girl up like, oh my God, she's a great striker. She's a great kickboxer. She's actually going to be a problem for Amanda Nunes. But then we had this fight against Amanda Nunes, and pitiful isn't a way to describe it. That's an understatement. She did nothing. She did absolutely nothing. I don't even know what else to say. She did nothing. It was one of the worst performances I've ever seen for a fighter. And then you could say, yeah, well, it was against the greatest of all time, Amanda Nunes. I don't care. People at least try. She didn't try. That performance just left such a sour taste in my mouth. But before that, yeah, you know what? She's a good striker for bantamweight, but nothing really made me go, oh, well, this girl's going to be the title fight. You know what I mean? I have no faith in her, and I have even less faith in her after Amanda Nunes. She's taking on Karol Rosa, who's an okay striker in herself. This fight's probably going to stay on the feet, and Irene Aldana will probably be a little bit more technical on the feet, but Karol Rosa, decision machine, win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. Nothing really stands out about her either, to be honest with you. I don't know, man. I don't know what to think. You have 28 years old versus 36 years old almost. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking Karol Rosa. I did not like this performance. I don't care that it was against Amanda Nunes. Like I said, pitiful is an understatement. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think. I'm going to pick Karol Rosa. At least she does something in her last fight. At least she tried to win her last fight. I don't care. I'm picking the youth. I'm picking Karol Rosa. Yeah, she's going to lack a little bit on the feet, but maybe at least she'll try to win. I'm picking Karol Rosa to win. Moving on to the headlining prelim fight, we have Josh Emmett taking on Bryce Mitchell. This is a very fun fight. Very interesting fight because there's a couple asterisks to this fight. And you know what? I'll go through that now, okay? I'll go through that right now. Josh Emmett, this is his last fight. This is a retirement fight. You could take a look at that. It just makes me question his motivation for this, okay? Because on one end, you could say Josh Emmett wants to go on top. He wants to have that crazy knockout win. That's how he wants to be remembered. Or you could look at it from the sense where, and this is the problem because we don't know Josh Emmett, right? We don't know where he's coming into thinking about this. He could say, oh, this is my last fight. This is the last paycheck. I'm never getting back to the title again. Maybe I won't work out as hard for this fight. It could go hugely one way or the other way. And that's why I'm a little bit unsure about Josh Emmett right now. But he's taking on Bryce Mitchell, and on his side of the coin, he just took this fight. Josh Emmett was supposed to fight Giga Chikadze. Bryce Mitchell is coming off the couch taking this fight. It's very important to think about when you're making your picks, especially if you're betting. But Josh Emmett, man. Josh Emmett is, in my opinion, not as good as his record says. If you take a look at some of his wins, okay, the Shane Burgos, okay. Dan Ige, he lost this fight. Calvin Kattar, he absolutely lost this fight. Then he lost against Yair Rodriguez. Then he got dominated against Ilia Topuria. In my opinion, he is coming in on a 4-fight losing streak. These fights, both of them, are complete robberies, in my opinion. It's not, oh, well, it was a close fight. You know, it was a close fight. Well, it could have gone either way. No, absolute robberies. 100%. He has not looked good. He's almost 39 years old right now. He's coming to the end of his career. He's slow. All he has is overhand. All the hype is from some KOs that he got back in the day. I think Josh Emmett is incredibly overrated. Bryce Mitchell might be overrated too. That's a problem. You have Bryce Mitchell, who looked fantastic coming onto the scene. Fantastic. After the Edson Barboza win, everybody was high on him, myself included, to be honest, because he looked good, and he fought some good fighters. He looked really good in his performance, but then you have the stomping that Ilia Topuria gave him. And that's when I lost a little bit of faith, but at the same time, Ilia Topuria seems like he's something special. He bounced back with a win against Dan Ige, which was a very, very rough performance on his end. It's tough because that just wasn't a good performance, and you even could argue that went to Dan Ige, but I'm not going to debate that one. Close enough. This is a tough fight because, like I said, you have the problems with Josh Emmett coming in, his motivation levels, and Bryce Mitchell coming in with, is he going to be in shape? Bryce Mitchell, we found out, has a little bit of a problem on the feet. I don't want to say it's a problem on the feet. Like, sometimes he just looks sloppy. Like, I could hear me out. I could see this happening. I could see Josh Emmett cranking Bryce Mitchell, and then him doing the whoa, not looking good, so good. You know what I mean? Like, it's like his heart wants to be in the fight, but he doesn't have the skills where he can survive. He might shoot in for a pathetic double leg takedown. You know? Does that make any sense? I just don't have faith if Josh Emmett cranks Bryce Mitchell that Bryce Mitchell will be able to fight his way out of it. But on the other hand, Josh Emmett looked horrible in his last 4 performances. What if Bryce Mitchell comes in, takes him down, just grinds him out, maybe even submits him? This is a 50-50 fight, in my opinion. I don't know what to think. And especially when you add the asterisks to it, I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think. If you had a gun to my head, I would pick Bryce Mitchell just because Josh Emmett, he has an overhand, and that's all he's used in his last 4 fights, and he even got stomped just 5 months ago. Maybe he's not even the same guy after that beatdown. I'm going to pick Bryce Mitchell, but I honestly, guys, I think this is a 50-50 fight. Now, guys, I'm sorry for putting a little bit of a pause on the video here, but I do want to point you to the membership of the channel. If you guys are interested in seeing the official plays, the official bets that I will be making, I will have them in the community post section every Thursday or Friday of the exact bets that I'm making, not just for UFC, but any other organizations. Of course, I primarily bet on UFC, but if you're interested in seeing what I'm doing, possibly tailing any, join the membership down below. Very cheap compared to other channels. I will show you that. And if you'd like to see how I've been doing, I have been posting the results to these on the complete betting guide videos. If you're watching this the day that it comes out, that video will be out tomorrow, so check it out, guys. Regardless, I appreciate you watching the video. Let's get into the main card. Moving on to the main card, to the fight that has garnered the most attention in the past couple weeks, we have Vicente Luque taking on Ian Machado Garry. We have fan favorite versus arguably the most disliked fighter in the UFC right now. I have a problem here, though, because Ian Garry should dominate this fight, man. He should dominate this fight, but there's something that I do want to get into, okay? Let me talk about Vicente Luque first. Vicente Luque. Back in the day, was convinced that this dude was the guy to fight Kamaru Usman. I thought he was so good. Well, don't get me wrong, he's a great fighter. I'm just no longer convinced that he is the top caliber of fighter. I think he's a solid number 10 guy, kind of like he is ranked onto Tapology right now. I don't know if that's his official UFC ranking, but regardless, it's around there. Vicente Luque went through a couple really, really rough losses, both against Jeff Neal and Bilal Muhammad. And we found out that he had a brain bleed, which is huge if you're a UFC fighter. Maybe that'll make you not want to get hit so much. I don't know what that does to you mentally. And we don't know exactly, like, of course, Vicente Luque is saying everything's all taken care of, right? But at the end of the day, you had a brain bleed. Does that really affect your body? I don't know much about it personally. He bounced back with a really nice win against Rafael dos Anjos, but the problem is Rafael dos Anjos is much, much older now, and with that performance that Vicente Luque put on, I'd be convinced that a younger Rafael dos Anjos would have won that fight. But it is important to note that upon his return, his fight IQ was much, much better. He was very patient. He mixed up his options. He was just a nice step ahead of Rafael dos Anjos, while in the past, we've seen Vicente Luque have no problem getting into a firefight. He was very patient here, but it left me with, I'm not so sure how you do at the top of the division. He's taken on Ian Machado Garry, who has looked absolutely phenomenal the entire way through. He had one hiccup against Kenan Song, and that was just him getting knocked down, but he survived through it, and I honestly look at that, and every time we break down Ian Garry, I say this. This proved to me that this guy has heart, he has determination, he can win the fight. He's coming off of an absolute domination against Neil Magny. Was every round in this fight a 10-8 round? If not, 2 of them were. This was a domination. One of the greatest performances we've seen in a long time. Like one of the most one-sided performances. Ian Garry should absolutely win this fight. No question about it. He should be the rangier guy. Which shockingly, he has a reach disadvantage here, but still, he uses his reach phenomenally. I think he'll be able to keep him out bay with the kicks. I think Ian Garry should destroy Vicente Luque. Vicente Luque, even if he wants to come in and brawl, I don't think Ian Garry will be there to do it. Here's the thing. Here's the big thing, and this is why I'm not betting on this fight. Ian Garry is coming to this fight as arguably the most hated fighter in UFC history right now. Arguably. Regardless, he's up there. How's that going to affect him mentally? Historically, he's been able to get the crowd behind him. Everybody cheering Ian Garry. But there is no question, when he's fighting a guy like Vicente Luque, a guy who's very, very likable, the crowd's going to be booing Ian Garry. The press conference is going to be booing Ian Garry. Colby Covington's going to be at the press conference telling him how his wife's sleeping with another guy. How is that going to affect him mentally? I really believe this is something you need to take into consideration because Ian Garry, like I said, he should be the better fighter, miles ahead. Vicente Luque has lost a step a little bit, in my opinion. I think everything about this matchup says Ian Garry will win. I worry about his mental state. And you see him coming in now where he's like, oh my God, I'm worried about my family. And I'm not here to argue like, okay, Ian Garry, like all this hate's deserved and stuff like that. I'm just saying that the hate is happening. The hate is happening. The whole world's making fun of Ian Garry right now. The whole world is laughing at Ian Garry right now. The crowd is probably going to be booing Ian Garry, maybe throwing some stuff at him. How is he going to take that? How is he going to come in and be on his best game? This is the first time this is going to happen. If he gets past it, if he looks like he has in his last couple fights, I'll be completely back on the Ian Garry train. I think that is actually something we need to take into consideration here when we're picking Ian Garry. I'm still picking Ian Garry. But I do not be shocked if Ian Garry shows up there, looks slow, doesn't look like the same Ian Garry that we've seen, and Vicente Luque puts on a good performance. I'm just saying that's something to keep in mind. Moving on to the next fight, we have Tony Ferguson taking on Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. He's returning to the octagon. Now, I do want to get one thing out of the way, because I just talked about a lot of the potential for Ian Garry to be losing a step because of the fans just not liking him all of a sudden. Paddy Pimblett is kind of going through the same thing, but not nearly to the same extent. Nobody's laughing at Paddy Pimblett the same way Ian Garry is. And Paddy Pimblett always did kind of have people disliking him. You know, people always thought he was like a little cringy, you know. So Paddy Pimblett's kind of used to a little bit of hate. So I don't think while after his last performance, more people dislike Paddy Pimblett, I don't think it's something we really need to take a look at. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. But, oh boy, Tony Ferguson lost 6 fights in a row. Looking worse in each fight. What's there to say? Yeah, he's taking on some great fighters. There's nothing to say. Tony Ferguson's lost a step. He's 39 years old. He's not the same guy. He can't take damage. But he's training with David Goggins. Like, no, I don't care. Tony Ferguson's done. Paddy Pimblett has looked great in the UFC so far. Even before the UFC, had a great run. But of course, he had the robbery win against Jared Gordon. You could chalk that up to an injury at the beginning of the fight, but I'd have to go back and look at it, to be honest with you. Guys, I don't know what else to say. If this was a young Tony Ferguson, we'd be having a very different conversation here. But Paddy Pimblett's going to come in there, and he's going to destroy Tony Ferguson. There's not much to break down here. I'm insanely confident Paddy Pimblett's going to win. I don't care where the fight goes, whether it's on the feet, on the ground. Tony Ferguson's slow. He lost a step. He can't take the damage. Justin Gaethje ruined him. He's not the same guy. And he's going to keep fighting. The UFC should cut Tony Ferguson. This will be shock of the century to me if Tony Ferguson gets the win here. Paddy Pimblett's my pick, 100%. Moving on to the featured bout, we have Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. This is an interesting fight. Very, very interesting because Shavkat Rakhmonov has looked like an absolute killer coming into the UFC. He's made every fight look easy except for his most recent performance against Jeff Neal. While he still did look good in this fight, okay? He had his moments. I didn't like how willing he was to get hit. Just like we were talking about Cody Garbrandt. His chin showed up. Everything looked to be okay. But there were moments where he looked like shots were affecting him. And I don't like how careless he was in this fight. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is somebody who could actually really, really take that into consideration and capitalize on it. Stephen Thompson, though. We all thought, myself included, that Stephen Thompson was done. Okay? 2 really rough losses against Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad, there. He bounced, and he didn't look good in these fights at all. Okay, he's 40 years old. I was like, I'm not picking a 40-year-old to win. I was so sure Kevin Holland was going to beat him. I lost fight on this. I lost money on this fight. I was so sure that Kevin Holland was going to beat him. But all of a sudden, Stephen Thompson, he's 40 years old. He fought Kevin Holland. He looked like he was 20 years old. Powerful, accurate. The cardio was there. I couldn't believe what I was seeing in that fight. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy he won. Stephen Thompson's one of my favorite fighters. But for a 40-year-old, for a 41-year-old to do that and look as young as he did, I don't know what to say. Like, he did not look like he was 40 years old. He looked like he was 10 years younger. So he showed that he is still here. He can still compete. He just has that hole in the ground game that both Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns exposed. Shavkat Rakhmonov is absolutely somebody who can expose that because he is a fantastic, dominant, heavy grappler. He could take down Stephen Thompson and just get a quick win like we've seen him do. That could absolutely happen. What if Shavkat Rakhmonov, though? What if he comes in like he did with Jeff Neal, has a little bit of adversity, just starts swinging? Wonderboy can take his head off. That's why I'm like, I'm picking Rakhmonov to win, but I don't know. I don't think Rakhmonov should be this heavy of a favorite because of that last fight. I question some of the decisions that he made, and Stephen Thompson is one of those fighters who could absolutely capitalize on that. You might think I'm crazy because the whole world's picking Rakhmonov to win. I'm not picking Stephen Thompson to win, don't get me wrong, but I could just see a world where an upset happens. I really can. I'm going to pick Shavkat Rakhmonov because I got to have faith that he'll come in, he'll go for a takedown, he'll get a choke very quickly. He can do that. His last performance just makes me worry. That's all. Give me Shavkat Rakhmonov. That's going to be my pick. Moving on to the co-main event, we have Alexandre Pantoja taking on Brandon Royval, and this is a rematch. This is a rematch, and honestly, guys, I don't see much changing. Alexandre Pantoja has looked fantastic. He is a very, very underrated fighter in the flyweight division, and honestly, has been for a very long time. Maybe you could argue that it's his activity, but it's still, this dude is so good. And I was completely convinced that he could be a very long-time reigning dominant champion after this performance against Brandon Moreno. We always knew Pantoja was good, but this dude showed heart, determination. He showed that he has a skill set absolutely everywhere. Like, we already knew this stuff, but I mean, every little bit was put to the test at the maximum level in this Brandon Moreno fight. And I thought he won this fight. I didn't even think it was a split decision. I thought Alexandre Pantoja won this fight clearly. He looked so good in this fight. I was so impressed, and I've been impressed from him the entire time. He's taking on Brandon Royval, who he is 15-6, okay? But the reason that he's 15-6 is because he comes in there and he wants to fight. He comes in there looking to take your head off. It doesn't always work out, but it's worked out lately for him. It worked out really lately for him because he's been looking a little bit better, a little bit more of a killer. But then again, how much do you really want to take these wins into consideration, especially a split decision? He destroyed Mateus Nicolau. We didn't really see much of a fight here, but he destroyed him, and that's why he got the title shot, because Nicolau, everybody was like, okay, Nicolau's going to get the title shot after this fight, and then Brandon Royval just completely snagged it. I got to think, especially after the first fight and seeing Pantoja continue to improve, I don't see anything else really changing. I got to pick Alexandre Pantoja in this fight. I think that he is the more complete fighter 100%, while Brandon Royval always offers that danger. And that might stop me from putting my money where my mouth is, because he will come in there and try to take your head off, and he is more than capable of doing so. I think Pantoja's defense will be there. I think his wrestling will be there. I think Brandon Royval could charge in. Pantoja can meet him with a takedown. He'll probably use, it's tough because even Royval has a reach advantage. I still think that Pantoja uses his reach a little bit better. I think he'll be on the outside. I think the defense will be on par. I think Pantoja is just a complete champion, and he could reign dominant as a champion for a very long time. Very high on this guy. I'm picking Pantoja to win this fight in the rematch against Brandon Royval. Moving on to the main event, we have Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. This is close to a 50-50 fight. You have Leon Edwards. Oh boy, you have Leon Edwards. This is exciting, man. You have Leon Edwards, who, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not completely convinced yet. Because if you take a look at his wins, they are... It's tough. It's tough because he looks so good, especially like the Nate Diaz fight, but the resume just hasn't held up to some other guys in the division. That's what I'm really, what's making me stay back here. Kamaru Usman was dominating him before the head kick, and then he had the back and forth fight with Kamaru Usman that, in my opinion, he clearly won. Leon Edwards is a good fighter, okay? Something makes me question if he's one of the greats. That's all. Like, after this fight, he said that he wants to go up and fight the winner of Duplessis and Strickland. Either of those guys are going to kill him. That's where I'm kind of at with Leon Edwards. He's taking on Colby Covington, who has been incredibly inactive. If you take a look at his wins, they exactly haven't aged all that well, right? Tyron Woodley, Robbie Lawler, out of their primes completely. Jorge Masvidal, same kind of deal. Kamaru Usman, he lost to twice, but at the same time, he looked very good in those fights. You know what you get with these guys. You have Leon Edwards, who has a very complete skill set, very good striker, very patient, knows where he wants to land his shots. And you have Colby Covington, who has that relentless pressure. Here's my problem. Colby Covington, I want to take a look at the mental side of things, just like I was talking about with Ian Garry. Colby Covington, first of all, is 36 years old almost. He hasn't fought in 2 years. Is he going to be able to keep up that pace? I want to say no. But I have no reason to really believe that Covington has lost a step. It's just we haven't seen him. If it was up to me, if I had to make a prediction, I would say Colby Covington, his age will start showing in this fight. But think about the mental aspect of this, okay? This is his final title shot. This is a must-win fight for him. This is an undeserving title shot, okay? In the last Kamaru Usman fight, there was a lot of pressure on him. He came in almost shaking. You could see how nervous he was on his face, and it took him getting knocked down to wake up and actually put that back, to actually get back into the octagon. That's what it took for him. He was hesitant, he wasn't doing much, and that, in my opinion, is what lost him that rematch. This will be more pressure on him. We just got word that Mr. Trump is going to come in to support Colby Covington and watch him become champion. If that doesn't put a lot of pressure on you, I don't know what does. Like, and you have the whole video, like, he was actually there, and he's like, oh, Mr. President, I'm going to win the title for you. That's an incredible amount of pressure. Plus, you have a lot of people just hoping that you win the fight in general. I know Colby Covington does have his haters, but at the same time, he's become quite likable over the course of the past couple years. My whole point in bringing this up, especially with all of that being together, Trump being there, Covington having his last title shot, and with how nervous he was in his last Kamaru Usman fight, I got to imagine that those nerves will get to him again. And this is such a close fight because we don't know what's gonna happen. Because is Colby Covington going to be able to impose his will on Leon Edwards, or is Leon Edwards going to keep him out of range? Is he going to pick him apart? Is he going to take out the legs? It's a very tough fight, and Leon Edwards could probably, it wouldn't shock me if Leon Edwards could contest with Colby Covington in the wrestling game. So that's the stuff that I like to take a look at when you have a fight that's about 50-50. And in my opinion, it's 50-50. The odds have been bouncing around like this, so it's not just my opinion that this is a 50-50 fight. I think we need to take a look at those outside circumstances. And all of those outside circumstances say that Colby Covington is coming on with too much pressure. I don't like that for him, and that's the only reason that I'm picking Leon Edwards to win this fight. Other than that, skill for skill, I think it's very even. I think it's a very even fight, and this is where I'd love to know what you guys think down below. But with that being said, though, with the main event brings an end to this full card breakdown and prediction video. This is probably a long one. I don't know how long I've been talking for, but this is a very, very exciting card. I am excited for just about every fight besides, like, Casey O'Neill and Irene Aldana. But other than that, it's a fantastic card, guys. Let me know what your picks are down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you are new here and you enjoy the content, please consider hitting the like button, help the channel a ton, and subscribe if you are brand new. On the screen right now, you'll have 2 videos to check out if you'd like to continue watching the Clenbat channel. I will see you either there or in the next video, everybody. Take care.